Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Matan, and we're going to talk today about how to get database security right. We'll talk about why it's needed. We'll talk about the top threats that we have for database security. And the main part of the presentation is about, for each of those threats, how do we protect properly against each and every threat. So, to start, why it is that we need database security? So, there's a pretty simple answer that people might give, meaning if you have something valuable, you want to protect it. And that's true. The point is that in many ways, database security is still a new concept. Database has been around for quite a while, and yet the way most companies approach database security, or security as a whole, is still stuck at least 10, 15 years behind. If you ask most companies whether they secure the database, they will say absolutely, we are totally secure. The database is part of the network. We secure the network. We also secure the endpoints. So we protect the databases by securing around it. However, if you asked these companies that have been breached in the last few years, you would notice that they also have considered themselves as secure in terms of databases. Securing the network does not prevent many, many millions of records from being stolen from databases every year. So why is that? We are talking about a different paradigm when we're talking about securing databases. It is no longer about securing endpoints, like it was in the 90s. It is no longer about securing the network, like it was in the early 2000s. We are talking about securing your data center. Securing the databases means securing your data, meaning securing not, instead of chasing after the mice, we want to secure the cheese. We want to protect the cheese. And all of these companies have had a paradigm that says, if I secure the network, if I look at my endpoints properly, I will be protected, and evidently that is not enough. So we will talk today about how to properly secure databases and how to look at all of this from a different paradigm. So 96% of the records breached in 2011 were based on databases, were taken from databases. Databases are a top target for malicious attacks, top target for organized crime, and top target for activists. These are the most valuable assets of the organization, and yet they're protected just like everything else, using the network paradigm. If you look at what companies, these specific companies that were hacked, and many others, how do they spend their security budget? Less than 5% of the security spending goes for data center security. So we're still at a disconnect from where the actual threats are and where we spend the security budget and how we actually protect our most valuable assets. So, as I said earlier, 56% of the companies that actually were hacked before they were said their databases are secure and they are completely protected against the very attacks that later happened. So once again, we have a disconnect, and we'll talk about how to do that. These are the top threats against the database. These are updated every year. These are 2013. They're in the process of being updated for 2014 as well. And here's what we see. We see the top excessive and unused privileges. So somebody with privileges they should not have. Even privilege abuse as a second item when it's something that I should have, but I'm still using it in a way that I should not. SQL injection, the good old friend that we all know. Malware, weak audit trail, a very, very important point that is not easy to grasp. Storage media exposure, vulnerable and misconfigured databases, unmanaged sensitive data, also something that is not easy to comprehend, and we'll talk about this in depth. And lastly, denial of service and limited security expertise and education. These are the main threats that we'll talk about today. And we'll go into each and talk about how to protect this. And as you see, it all very much integrates together. Protecting your databases means looking at all of these together and providing an integrated approach that looks at all of them and provides the solution. We'll not talk too much about storage media exposure, basically encryption, and the usual things that are being done are fairly adequate for these solutions. So we won't, in the interest of time, won't go into that. And in terms of expertise and education, we'll touch on this when we talk about partnerships, but just briefly. So let's start with the first one, excessive and unused privileges. When we look at excessive and unused privileges, we're basically talking about the fact that things are changing. Okay? You have an employee, they left or they transferred, or maybe someone gave them something that they should not have been given because it's easier, or there was some conflict of privileges, and the permissions are incorrect. They can do something that they should not be doing. And then but either themselves or a malware that got into their machine, or someone else using that privilege can do stuff that they might not be desirable. So obviously, we need better management for for privileges. So in order to get security right, what you want to do is first you want to manage and review your permissions periodically. Okay, this can sound like a very daunting task. We'll talk about automating in a second, but it is something that's required and you can do more easily than you think. So we want to review, we want to make sure that data owners, the ones who own the data, are the ones approving the permissions. Is Jim supposed to have access to that table? Is Jim even supposed to have access to this database? You want to ask those questions. And of course, you want to make sure that you understand the impact of each and every permission. By giving a certain group of people access to a specific database, you want to also know who is in that group. So you want to review this periodically and see the changes. And again, you want to automate the review process. If you do not automate the review process, you will stop doing it. Or you will need to spend many hours of many people in your organization just reviewing privileges. In order to do this properly, you want to use tools that allow you automation, that allow you efficiency in how you review, and make sure that you review what you need and only what you need. Privilege abuse, very similar, but with a very important point. The main issue here is not that I've given someone permissions that they should not have, is that I've given them a permission that they should have, but for some reason they have used it the wrong way. And as you can see, this is fairly common. We have even police workers and basically everybody tends to abuse privileges when needed, definitely when they're about to leave the organization. So we're all about trusting our employees, but the first order of business would be to make sure that when they do that, when they want to do that, they cannot. So the main principle is the same. You want to review the permission, make sure they have only what they need and only for the period of time that they need it. But not only that, you want to make sure that you determine the normal behavior. Meaning, if I have an employee in accounting, and that employee is supposed to go into the salaries of all of the other employees, he has that permission, he's supposed to do that. But I usually see him do this only at the end of the month, looking at everyone, and randomly throughout the month, looking every once in a while at the salaries of a specific employee. 1, 2, maybe 5. And then sometime before he leaves, or at any point, I see that that specific employee has diverted from the baseline, meaning for some reason he looked at 500 employees in the same day, and there's no real reason. So at the very least, I want to ask, why did that happen? I want to get an alert on that, and I want to ask, why did that happen? And I want to be able to get an answer. So that will allow me to anticipate and to alert and to investigate any deviation from the norm. So even when the privilege is fine, I want to be able to detect abuse. So one major solution would be to investigate anomalies. You need a tool that will allow you to find the baseline, secure the baseline, and then see when something is amiss. And of course, you want to audit any access to sensitive data. We'll go deeper into auditing in a few slides, but that is absolutely a must. Even completely authorized sensitive data access needs to be audited consistently. SQL injection. We all know about this. Basically, one of the most common attacks, something that has existed for a while and yet still happens and is still possible and actually insanely easy to do. What you basically do is you get SQL commands from the application, and that's also where you want to protect it. A single SQL command, SQL injection command, can create a huge damage, and also is very, very profitable for the attacker. So this is definitely something that needs to be protected and still isn't protected. And one of the main reasons is that vendors of applications still try to do this at the application level. This has been proven as nearly impossible. Definitely when you want to change applications and you want to update them, you will end up being vulnerable. What you want to do in order to protect here is use a web application firewall at the application level, and then you can protect the databases in the same fashion. This is also something that is an emerging market. It's something that we see as beginning to become the standard, but still there is still a disconnect, and it does take some time for organizations to realize that need. And of course, again, you want to profile behaviors and detect anomalies. If your application is a set application that does a specific set of queries for several months or several years, when someone does SQL injection, it will definitely not be something that the application usually does. So if you profile the baseline and you have a good understanding of that baseline, you will be able to automatically and easily detect something that deviates from that. Malware. We all know it. Definitely an emerging issue that many companies are very much becoming aware of in recent years. We're talking about malicious software that has been found, that has infected one of your internal users. When IT managers talk about the issue of bring your own device being that dangerous, this is what they're usually talking about. And the point is that many people think, and many organizations think, that in order to protect malware, protecting the endpoints or finding that malware and, let's say, removing that from the user's machine or completely reimaging the user's machine is enough. There is a question that is usually not asked, and that is why is the malware there? And it is found that the vast majority of malware attacks end up accessing the data center. So we have the malware that got into the organization, and you will get malware in your organization eventually. Definitely if you use mobile devices, definitely if you use devices that change, you want to update from time to time, you will end up getting malware in your organization. You want to, of course, remove that, but you also want to instantly be aware of how it affects your databases. So in order to get this right, obviously you need to implement a malware detection system, but also very, very important, you want to integrate it into your database security. As soon as you found malware, you want to make sure that user does not access your sensitive information. You may want to be able to continue to allow that user to continue to work, but definitely not access your sensitive information, even if that user is normally authorized. So you want to do integration so you have a full view of what's going on. Weak audit trail. Probably the #1 issue in terms of how misunderstood it is and how much it can be improved in most organizations. So, do you know what's going on in your data center? Do you know what your employees are doing? basically, we're talking about the lack of ability to record database activity in a secure and useful manner. What do I mean by secure? I mean things like separation of duties. If you have an employee that already has privileged access to the database, you want to make sure that when he accesses the database, there's a different entity doing the monitoring. If a malware has gained privileged access to the database, the first thing it will do is neutralize the internal mechanisms of security inside the database. So you want to make sure this is secure. You want to make sure it's encrypted properly. And, of course, useful. When I say useful, I mean that you need to be able to investigate. If you collect huge amounts of data, when the attack actually comes, okay, if you actually have been compromised in any way, you want to easily be able to find exactly what happened. And that is a very, very problematic task, definitely if you collect huge amounts of data. We call it the needle in a haystack problem, but actually one of our customers recently had a very apt name for it. They said it's actually a needle in a needle stack. So it is completely impossible to find it if you do not know and prepare in advance for looking exactly at what you need. The probably most common mistake that people do, most common approach is using native tools. Native tools are already there. We're familiar with them. However, again, when we talk about how to properly address the problem, they do not provide a secure and a useful audit trail. So, first of all, you want to be finding the real requirement. What do I mean by the real requirement? If you want to monitor any access to sensitive data, do you want to monitor everything that your privileged, high-privileged users are doing? Do you want to monitor what applications are doing, what administrators are doing? Make sure that you know what it is that is sensitive, what it is that's a problem, and make sure you audit that and audit only that. The tendency is to audit all. And when you say, I just want to completely secure my database, so I'll just audit everything, when it comes time to investigate, you're in a big problem. And that is why auditing only what you need, but everything that you need is very, very important, so you can actually have an effective audit solution. And of course, separation of duties, as mentioned, definitely if you want to be protected against malware and malicious insiders, as well as compromised insiders, of course. And definitely effective reporting and investigation tools. So in order to get that done, you need a dedicated tool. You need something that is specifically designed to perform that task. So why, if many companies are familiar with some of the drawbacks of native tools, why are they used? So if you ask some of the companies that are using native tools and have been using them for a while, even sometimes after not being able to be compliant with regulations because of some of these drawbacks, many times what you find if you dig deeply enough is that the inadequate solution is being used because it is considered as free or cheap. So hopefully we can check the box, consider ourselves secure, and do it with relatively low expenditure. The problem with this, of course, the first problem with this, of course, is that doing things less than properly is less than desirable. However, the reality is that native audit is not only ineffective, it is also not as cheap as people think. There are three main categories where this costs organizations a lot, and I want to go a little deeper into that because it is an important point. About 20% additional performance impact on your databases. This means that for every 5 database machines, you will need an extra one because you're utilizing native audit tools. This is obviously a huge difference in how much you spend. Of course, additional software, additional costs for maintenance, and as mentioned before, if you do not focus on audit on the audit that you need, you will spend a lot more storage, and you will spend a lot more administration on all of these things that you use that are quote-unquote free. So we're talking about an ineffective solution that also ends up creating a lot of hidden costs. And this is something that the industry is starting to realize, but still isn't completely clear. So if you want to look for how to do database security right, one of the first things you will probably need to do is find a budget for it, find a buy-in for it, make sure that it is cost-effective for your organization. It will create the correct impact. Looking for these hidden costs is an excellent solution. You may end up saving a lot. And we have just recently had a large European bank that moved from native audit to a dedicated tool, and was able to save almost 90% of the cost that they were spending specifically just on auditing. I'm not even talking about compliance, security, and those other measures that I've mentioned, just on the auditing in terms of how much they spent on storage, how big the team was, all the things that they needed to do, they saved about 90%. And in such a huge organization, we talk about many, many millions of dollars. So, next point, vulnerable and misconfigured databases. This is, of course, a moving target. You want to constantly be configuring your databases properly. You want to constantly be patching them. And in a large organization, even in a medium or small organization, you do not necessarily know how to do that quite effectively. So you have some examples for what you may have is default passwords, active sample users, shared accounts, external groups managing some of the permissions externally, causing permission conflicts, and of course, non-patch databases. If you look online, Imperva CTO Amikai Shulman has a presentation, a very interesting one, for why do you need a PhD to patch databases. A very, very important item. And again, this is when we talk about, and the example that he uses there, by the way, specifically for Oracle, and the reason he's using Oracle is not that Oracle is the most complicated, is that Oracle is the easiest. And still a very, very complex thing to keep up to date, yet you do need to do that. The question is, how do you prioritize your efforts? How do you spend your efforts properly in that moving target? So, of course, you want to test your database for issues. You want to have a complete picture at any given moment of what it is that your database is vulnerable to. And, of course, you want to use the security benchmarks as your guidelines. Even if you do not have to be compliant, using things like DISA STIG or CIS as a benchmark for what it is that you want to be protected against is a good measurement. And of course, you want to change the configuration when needed. You want to patch as often as you can, but definitely focus on your sensitive data first. You want to virtually patch when patching is delayed. So if I cannot patch this month, I have to wait. I can use virtual patching using external tools in order to allow myself some breathing room when patching of many, many databases is not an option or takes time. Unmanaged sensitive data. A very, very important point, and again, often misunderstood. What does that mean? It means that you have sometimes no knowledge where your sensitive data is. It means that anyone can create information or copy information of your customers and your partners and your employees in order to improve your software. Maybe it's a developer copying a database to his own machine in order to start working on something. Maybe it's someone from IT using moving the entire database to a test environment in order to upgrade the system. All of these things mean that you have sensitive data in a place that you cannot even protect because you don't even know where it is. Also, if you do not know where your sensitive data is, even within a certain database, you will end up, as mentioned, protecting all of the database and auditing everything, and again, spending more than you need to. What you want to do is find your rogue databases. Make sure you scan your environment for rogue databases. Find what's missing. Scan database for sensitive data. Basically, you can use a tool to find where the sensitive data is. You want to focus that, or use that as the focus for the entire security effort. So if I know where my sensitive data is, I can audit the access, I can track and improve the permissions specifically for that, and I can find and close vulnerabilities. So if you want to scope your project correctly, one of the first things you need to do, is to properly find what sensitive data you have, what it is that you really want to protect, and work accordingly. And, of course, denial of service. So denial of service is usually found with a forward-looking, an internet exposed application. So it's usually about the applications using the database rather than the database itself. So 2 types, network layer, DDoS attack. We have a bit of legitimate traffic and a bunch of sheep. Or a situation where we're talking about an application layer DDoS attack. The legitimate traffic is coming, the illegitimate traffic is coming, but the illegitimate traffic by itself causing the server to completely crash. The server cannot handle that amount of load. So these are the 2 items. What you want to do, of course, is have a dedicated DDoS solution that can mitigate both the application and the network layer DDoS attacks, and of course scale beyond the connection limits of your server. Definitely if you're not a huge organization, but even if you are, you want to make sure that when your network may be flooded, you have something ahead of your network protecting you, and that's in scale to whatever limits, whatever scale is necessary to protect your server. And of course, you want to try and protect the attacks close to the source. If you, the closer you are to your sensitive applications, the higher the chance is that if something does not work properly, you will get taken down. So we have went through all of the entire list. The next point is to summarize this and see how it is that we can get database security right as a whole solution. So the first thing you want to do is to locate, map, and prioritize your sensitive data. Make sure you know what it is that you want to protect, and you make this the focus of the rest of the project. You want to assess. You want to understand how vulnerable you are. You want to understand how big the risk is and how big the data is. You want to try and figure out what is the scale that you need to do, that you need to have. You want to review and validate user rights. You want to set the controls for auditing and controlling your data. You want to make sure the controls are in the right scope, they protect the right thing, and of course that you have the mechanism in place to change and adapt them. Also, you want to find abnormal behavior by creating a baseline of behavior that is the right one, and that your users, when your users deviate from that baseline, you will be able to find that. You want to, of course, then start actually doing auditing and security. You want to monitor, audit, and secure usage access. Everyone going into the sensitive data should be monitored. All of the high privilege users should be monitored, once again, according to where your sensitive data is and what your main goals of the project are. And lastly, as a continuous effort, a very, very important point, you want to measure and report. That's probably true for every project, definitely true for security. You want to review periodically, you want to certify, you want to set gates where you make sure everything is still up to date. You want to have automatic mechanisms in your tools that support that process, that make sure that you can update things and maintain control over your entire environment. Last but not least, how do you make the project successful? So all the things that I mentioned are necessary, and all the things that I mentioned are part of making the project successful. But there are a few best practices around how do you even approach such a project. How do you create the situation where you have the right team and you have the right approach for the entire thing. So the first thing is you want to make sure you scope correctly. These projects can be scary, they can look huge, they can look unfamiliar. You want to make sure you work with someone you can trust, and you want to make sure that they are scoped the right way. And scoping the right way does not necessarily mean doing everything at once. One of the approaches you could take is start small if needed and make sure you can see the benefits. If I have 40,000 databases, I will not want to necessarily protect all of them. Again, if I know where my sensitive data is, I'll definitely start there. But even if I want to start there, I may want to scope it further down if I want to ease into it. If I have either organizational issues or some breathing room in terms of compliance or security that I choose to utilize, I can start small, make sure the organization sees the benefit. Again, make sure the organization sees the savings when it's compared to native audit or wherever the organization is currently using, if anything, and make sure that that this is presented properly so the next phase can then come in. Automation of deployment. This is very, very often overlooked, and it can be a huge save. Creating such a deployment, definitely when we talk about large amounts of databases, can be very, very costly if you have to do it manually. And let's face it, we will have about 5, 6, maybe 10 different categories of how we protect things. Most organizations, once they know how to protect things, do it the same way for most of the databases or within groups. So it is fairly easy once you found what you want and tested it to know how you will protect the next database. So there is no reason to even have a lot of human involvement in creating the protection for the next database. Definitely not if your regular deployment of databases is automated. If your regular operations are automated, so should security be. So automation of deployment and having a tool that can do that easily and automatically according to your guidelines and works within your organization, the way your organization works, is a very, very important part. Of course, you need to choose a product that scales easily, definitely if you want to start small. You will usually find that what you do in the beginning needs to scale significantly. And if you want to scale significantly, you need a tool that will allow you to scale without completely changing your environment, without moving in a whole different direction, because now you're working with a different set of scale. So this is also a critical point. Of course, in a virtual environment, as most organizations are moving towards today in the cloud environment, scaling can be something that needs to happen very fast, and scaling needs to be completely automated, as those virtual tools usually allow us with regular operations. There is no reason why security should be any different. And of course, choose a vendor you can trust. If you remember, number 10 at the beginning of the presentation was about being continually educated about threats, about security, about what it is that might threaten your databases. Choosing a vendor you can trust means that you can work with that vendor, you can partner with that vendor, and you can get the relevant training that you need to work the product properly. You get the best practices. You get a solution that's tailored to your needs in a way that is not just copied from any other organization, even though you want to learn from them. You want to tailor something that works with your organization. You want to create something that will continue to work strategically for your organization in years to come. Getting a solution that's just a checkbox, as is, deployed and forgotten about, will create huge issues when you want to scale, will create huge issues when you want to add additional databases, and will create huge issues at the first sight of any other type of problem. So you want to make sure you work with the vendor in order to create the correct project and the correct way to deploy your solution. Thank you very much for listening.